Hello everyone, my name's Rain and I'm here to talk about the build I've been playing for Season 2 of Last Epoch. I've had a really good time playing it. It's not something I've really seen online very much. I haven't really seen anyone playing it, but so far it seems really strong. Probably not quite as strong as some of the absolute top builds, but it's still really good and is capable of clearing all content. The core of the build is this skill right here, Multistrike. Here, I'll just pop this up. So Multistrike, what it does is it's a melee attack. It hits, and when it hits, you gain a stack of armament. And so what armament does is it causes you to get an additional sword that will strike another nearby enemy when you use Multistrike. So this will stack up to a limit, and then it lets you hit extra enemies nearby. That by itself, not very good. Multistrike hasn't really seen use at all until this season, so obviously not great, but some things have changed that make it really interesting. And the main one is this here, Hallowed Arsenal. So this node makes it so instead of an extra sword, you instead cast Smite. This is much better because now we can scale Smite, which is already a really good spell, and it lets us scale attack speed instead of cast speed to be able to cast Smites very frequently. And this is a big deal because attack speed is a lot easier to scale than cast speed. Now that by itself wouldn't be necessarily the most insane thing ever, but there's a couple things that make this even better. So first of all, we can up the stacks of armament. Normally it only stacks up to 2 times, so you'd only be hitting with 3 swords, which isn't that good. But you can get an extra stack here. You can actually get another stack here, but this reduces attack speed, which we really don't want. The thing that kind of makes all of this click, though, is this node down here, Blade Storm, which says when you would create more additional swords than there are nearby enemies to target, because normally each enemy, or each sword, or in this case each smite, is going to target a different enemy. Each remaining sword can consume mana to strike the nearest enemy. So it'll consume 3 mana to hit the initial target, even if it was already hit. So this effectively means that when we max our stacks of armament, each time, keeping in mind we stack up to 3, right? So that's 3 smites. Those 3 smites will all be cast on the same single target. And when you get to the point we're at, where we're attacking 2 times a second, roughly, that's like 6 smites a second, which is pretty good. Now, what do we do with this? We could just approach smite in a bunch of different ways. But what I've chosen to do is I've gone Paladin, and I've converted smite using this Order of Lagan node to change smite's base fire damage, which you could do a fire damage build, but in this case I've decided to go with lightning, and the main reason is because it gives us electrify. Instead of ignite dot stacks, we get electrify dot stacks, and there's a bunch of benefits to using electrify right now. So we get this, we make it so we have a bunch of lightning pen with electrify, which is really good for DPS. We get 75% when smite hits, and we get an extra 75% duration on electrify, which is really fantastic. And we have a 100% chance to electrify on hit, specifically with smite, and we can stack that with other bonuses too, which gets really strong. The other benefit here is we're converting from fire to lightning, and this also makes it so any effects on this tree, where it says here, ignite chance from all sources is converted to electrify chance for smite. So that's a big deal. So here we have Holy Fire, which gives us 125% ignite chance, but that's not ignite. That's electrify. So that we're already at 225%, so guaranteed 2 stacks and maybe 3 stacks a hit, just from this passive tree here. We'll go through all the trees in detail later, but for now that's kind of all we need to know here. Now ailments for doing damage over time really like to scale with hits. Like how hard you hit doesn't really matter. What matters is how often you're hitting. And with Multistrike, we're hitting really often. So that's kind of the core of this build. We also decide to add on healing hands here, because with Cleric's Hammer you can make it so anytime you hit a melee, you cast healing hands. That does make it cost a little more and heal a little less, but that's okay. It works fine for what we're doing. And then, we make it so Healing Hands does damage, which normally would, it does fire damage, which isn't a huge deal, but the big benefit we get is it has a 100% chance to electrify, and then Holy Winds here is really strong. It helps our clear a lot, so not only does it make it so lightning damage over time done by Holy Hands does more damage, which is good, which is great, in fact. And it does more lightning damage, too, which more damage is better than added damage and better than increased damage, which is important. So it means the stacks that are applied by Healing Hands are going to be very strong. But even more important, it has this line down here at the bottom that says targets to spread Electrify to. So basically, when an enemy that has Electrify stacks is hit by Healing Hands, those stacks spread to nearby enemies, which helps our clear a decent bit. It's also just nice to have Healing Hands for some healing and stuff. And then we just take some other buff skills that are kind of good on Paladin. So before we go into the specific skill trees, let's just quickly look at what it looks like. So normally when we attack, right, we just do this Multistrike, which is really not very impressive. Now, one of the nodes you'll see later makes it so we actually do get one smite even if I don't have an armament stack. But the most important thing here is we build our armament stacks to 3. And now we're casting loads and loads of smites every time we hit. And you can see the Electrify stacks are almost at 800. It's really good. And we get a bunch of other debuffs here as well. So you can see all these hits we're getting, but if I let go here, it's pretty fun to look at the dot damage. I did 120 million there on one tick of dot, which is really nice. So that's kind of how it looks. I also just want to show how the AoE works. So you can see here, I'm just hitting this and it's spreading those Electrify stacks around. Now you aren't going to build the stacks as fast because the smites are getting spread around here, but that's not a big deal. That also helps with clear. The smites go pretty far, so it can hit things that are not close enough to get electrified. And then Multistrike does some splash damage too, so like when I'm hitting here, I'm actually hitting all 3 of these, which can be helpful as well. Another thing to note is you can hit these even when you're not close, but you won't keep building your armament stack, so you do want to be in melee. This is the biggest downside with this build. You can see, like, right here, I can't hit them, which can be annoying, especially in boss fights. It can get you killed sometimes. It's easily the biggest problem with this skill. I wish it just had a bit more range. But otherwise, it's fantastic, and it feels really good. I'll show an actual map later, or an actual monolith, and so you can see how it works, but I just kind of want to show what we're doing at a basic level here. So let's look at our passive skill tree. So we're going Paladin, and there's a few reasons for that, but probably the biggest reason is this node right here, Judgment of the Storm, which its 5-point bonus says you deal more lightning damage. That's important, we're doing more lightning damage. It's multiplicative with other modifiers. Boy, that's weird, it's hard to say. But long story short, more damage is better than increased damage. And most damage increases are just that increases rather than more lightning damage. So being able to stack this is really good. But it makes it so we get more lightning damage per 2% of added crit strike multiplier above the base 200. So like the base, the double damage doesn't matter here. But this is a really big deal because we can get, with good enough items, a lot of more lightning damage over time, which is huge for Electrify. And that's also why part of the benefit of going with damage over time here, instead of hit damage, is getting that multiplier. So, for the most part, there's nothing super crazy on this tree. I have it linked below in the description if you want to look at the build on last Epoch tools. But I can kind of quickly go over it. We take some pretty basic stuff here. We're actually avoiding certain things, which we'll get to in a minute, but like we just take Vitality here because we don't care about Strength really. It's like, you could take the Strength, but Vitality and the health regen is a bigger deal. You take this just to get the 5-point bonus and the extra damage. this for the damage taken from nearby enemies, since we're always nearby enemies. The cooldown recovery for movement skills is just nice. And the health, like, it's only 30, so it's not a big deal. But this is mostly for that 30% recovery for the movement skills. Time of Faith is actually a big deal. And actually, this is a good time to talk about mana, because the biggest thing you have to worry about with this skill is mana. So, Multistrike costs 0, which is good. But the smites cost mana normally. This says 0, but let me unequip my wand. So smite normally costs 3 mana, right? When you're casting so many a second, that can add up. And it gets much worse with does it show here? Yeah, it does. Healing Hands, like you can see this mana cost is 2, but I've taken a bunch of stuff to cut its mana cost. So like that would cost a ton of mana, and then you're consuming 3 mana every single time you hit the same target, right? So you can't really see here, but like you can see my mana just plummeting without the wand. And that is basically how we would sustain it. We just need a wand. Basically every single wand has -3 to spell mana cost. That's like the low roll. That's all you need. You need that, and then the other part of that is, that's not where I meant to go, is this node, Time and Faith, which gains mana when you use Multistrike. I have 4 points here. Honestly, I think I could probably go with less where I'm at now. This is just a comfortable point, and the 8% health gain is nice too. But you might be able to cut some points from here if we're really trying to optimize, but I think this is fine. This pretty much fixes our mana problems along with the wand. So you don't have to worry about mana at all, which is great. We're going with an offhand sword specifically so we can get melee attack speed scaling, since we aren't getting it from our main hand since we're using a wand. And we take attack speed here. I won't go through every node on this tree. But long story short, we take everything that gives us increased lightning damage and lightning pen. We take some survivability stuff, electrify chance. In some places we grab stuff like this that gives us some health regen, so some survivability. That's why we have Faith Armor and Prayer Aegis as well, to get the 5-point bonuses from them. The increased effect of Holy Aura and Symbols of Hope is just, again, nice. That's both damage and survivability. And then we have here where armor mitigation applied to, and increased armor, and the mitigation applied to damage over time is really good. And we get more health regen. So, and damage, that's pretty much everything. The only, I think, kind of strange node here is this one, which gives us 120% ignite chance. That 5-point bonus fire pen with ignite is useless, but that ignite chance for smite specifically gets converted to electrify chance, which is great for us. This is a little weird. We actually do a decent amount of ignite from our melee hits, because our melee hits don't get converted. Healing Hands also doesn't get converted, so those hits aren't going to get this, but Smite is mostly what's stacking our dots anyway, so this is still a worthwhile node to take. So that's more or less where we're going here. It's just damage and survivability. Now, if we look at the skills themselves, I'll go back to Multistrike real quick just to kind of point out what we're doing here. The most important nodes are we go over here to Smite, we go down here to Bladestorm. Those are the most important nodes, and those are the first things you'll grab. These, like, some of these nodes are useless, but we take them just because we need to get to these nodes. The damage of our Multistrike's not that important, which is why we take, like, this attack speed is a big deal, so we take it, and then we take Victory Strikes here, which basically if a sword would kill an enemy, it makes another sword to hit another enemy, so it's again helping with our AoE. Sweeping Blows also, we take extra points. We only need 3, but I'm taking 4 here because I'm at level 21, which we'll get to why that is the case in a second. And that just gives you, the splash damage is higher, and the distance your smites can go is higher. So again, it's just helping with clear. We'll go back to Smite real quick. Smite is a little weird, because, like, I want these electrify damage over time nodes, right? But then, like, here, I can make it cost more mana and get Lightning Bolt casts, but, like, those don't really do any... We're not going for hits. So it's not that great. Like, it's okay, but it doesn't seem worth it. So the main thing we do over here is get Holy Fire. With that, our extra points... Right now, I'm going Conflagration here, which does make Smite do more hit damage against not ignited enemies because of the way this conversion works if I bring this up. So it's actually against electrified enemies. It just gives us a little bit of extra damage, so we may as well. And then, like, I have a spare point, so I threw it in Spreading Flames. A lot of our damage increases do apply to any elemental damage over time, so, like, you may as well. But this, I don't think this really matters. The other option would be to try to go into Sacrifice to do more damage, but it doesn't seem worth it to me. Getting to this node here, where I just Flurry to get increased attack speed would be sweet. But it just costs so many points. I'm not sure it's worth it. You'd have to spend, like, let's say we took these 6 points out. You'd have to spend 3. You'd only get 2 points in here. So, like, I don't know. This is something you could experiment with, though, if you're curious. I'm not absolutely certain what the optimal solution is. But what really matters is the Electrify chance and then this Ignite chance. And you just kind of go from there. Go to Healing Hands again. You have to take this 4 out of 4 to cast Healing Hands every time you hit melee. This is another reason, by the way, I mentioned earlier, the range matters. Like, you can hit with Smite even if you're not hitting with your melee. But melees matter because it lets you cast Healing Hands. So you really, and keep your armament stacks up. So you got to make sure you're close enough to actually hit with the melee hit. And then we convert it to damage, and we go over here, we get the Electrify chance, and the Holy Winds. From there, there's a little more that you can do with it. I decided to go down here to Virtue of Patience. It does make it cast a little slower, but it greatly increases its area of effect and healing and damage, which, again, the hit damage doesn't matter that much, but this is still great, and the increased healing is really nice. It's part of what keeps our sustain up. Going with this makes the upfront healing lower anyway, so being able to increase it here again, and the AoE for clear is really, really nice. We also go down over here just to reduce mana cost. This isn't 100% necessary. You can, like, if you just take Purity of Thought, you can pretty much sustain it, but I also took these two, which makes it cost even less mana and gives us more area effect. Again, it's just clear. One option that I'm not currently doing is you could take Raya's Chariot and use Healing Hands as a move skill. Interestingly, and I didn't know this at first, making it a traversal skill doesn't affect indirect casts, so the trigger to cast will be normal, but you can also use Healing Hands as a traversal skill and give it a cooldown that way. I think it feels bad, though. Like, it's really slow. I'm not 100% sure on this, but from what I was testing, it seems like cast speed does affect it. So that makes it even slower if you want to go this node, and this node really is nice. So that's a problem with it. The other problem with it is, I don't know, man. It doesn't go very far, and it's slow, and it has a longish cooldown. So I'm really not sure it's worth. The primary benefit of doing this is you get access to Sunshred here, immune while moving, which can be very useful for boss fights and such where you need to immune through stuff. And I don't have that otherwise because we don't have the slots. I'm using Lunge, and I can't do anything with Lunge. I can't specialize it, so I can't get that invulnerability while moving, which does suck, and Lunge needs a target. But Lunge feels way better for mapping and stuff, so I don't know. This is something you could experiment with. If you really want this immunity, you could take Raya's Chariot and then mostly use Lunge, but then sometimes use Raya's Chariot to invuln things. I think that is possible, but you have to make some sacrifices, like getting rid of Virtue of Patience, which is kind of your main sacrifice, really. And I really don't want to, because this feels really good for clear, and the extra healing again is big. So I don't know, it's something to consider. Just something I'll mention real quick is, because some people might not realize this, Hand of Aurelius theoretically also, might seem like it would work, but it doesn't, because you have to directly cast Smite, and we're only indirectly casting Smite, so we have to go with Cleric's Hammer instead. From there, we just take the two big buff skills that Paladin gets, that are two of the reasons you go Paladin. The first one's Holy Aura. This is what you get for speccing Paladin in the first place. This gives us some really nice bonuses. This is just a passive aura, if you don't know. It's just active. It gives you and allies nearby, though that's not relevant. For me, I don't play multiplayer. But you gain 30% increased damage, and 15% additional elemental resistance, which is nice. And then you can activate it to double those bonuses for 4 seconds, which can be relevant. You just kind of use it on cooldown to do extra damage or to help you through certain sticky situations with the resists. So we just kind of go to the nodes that do stuff we want. This gives us Electrify Chance and Ignite, which double dips for Smite, which is awesome. Firestorm, which gives us global lightning damage, which is the primary thing there. We get Lightning Pen with Raya's Fury. And we get attack speed, just so we can attack with Multistrike more often. And then from there, that's kind of all the offensive nodes that are worth taking, like, because we don't use crit, we don't do throw, physical damage, not relevant. So we just go over for defensive stuff. So here I just go 4 into the increased health regen. Regen's really nice. It got a big buff with the most recent patch, and it feels pretty good to have, so that's nice to have. One of the reasons I want to go that node is to get Purification. The poison resistance is kind of nice for gearing. But the best part is Cleanse ailments. So if you start getting stacks of ailments that are being a problem, like poison, burn, electrify, anything like that, you can clear it by just activating Holy Aura, which is really, really handy. And I go over here to just make it so I get more healing effectiveness, which will affect things like Healing Hands. And Smite even heals if its AoE hits you as well. So those are good benefits there. So that's kind of it. There may be other options you could take, like Shelter from the Storm to get extra elemental resistances and endurance. You could maybe do that instead of the 2 health regen here. But that's kind of the only other thing I would consider on this tree. Now from there, we go to Symbols of Hope, our last skill. Yeah, Symbols of Hope got a big rework with this season, which is super nice. It used to be, it was just such a pain. It wasn't automated. Symbols would fall off really fast as you had to cast it to gain your symbols, or there was a node that let you like get them on kill, but that meant it was useless for bosses. Now it's just you build up symbols, and those symbols do things for you. So you see base level 8, you deal 3 additional fire damage, and you get increased health regen for each symbol. You can get up to 5 symbols if you go over here, but we can't really afford it, so we just get a 4th symbol here, so keep that in mind when we look at these buffs. So, with 4, we're getting 80% increased health regen. It's really nice. To be able to get this, we need to go up this way, but we kind of want to anyway. Most of the damage nodes are over here. But going over to that +1 isn't a big deal. We get extra endurance threshold, which is nice. This increased cooldown recovery speed, sort of relevant, because activating symbols can be nice. It guarantees some ward, though that falls off very fast for us because we don't have any retention. And you take less damage per symbol, which that is relevant. And having the increased cooldown recovery speed lets us do that. I still try to avoid it unless I think I'm going to die, because we lose damage doing that. But it's still something that's there. We go over here to Meditation. This makes symbols only affect you. So if you're playing with other people, you might not want to take this. But it doubles the health regen, which is crazy good. It's a lot of health regen. So it's absolutely worth taking this if you aren't doing party play. And then, of course, we grab the extra symbol. And then we go over on the left side here, just to get the damage nodes. And this is the biggest part of symbols. So you can see here, we get damage granted per active symbol, 25%. This mana regen node is just a travel node. It's not relevant. But we want it to here, so we get Electrify Chance per symbol, which is huge. So we're getting 120% just from 4 symbols up. And then here, Ignite Chance per symbol, which again gets converted to Electrocute for Smite. So that Ignite Chance per symbol is really, really good. So this gives us a bunch of ailment stacking just from having Symbols of Hope. And a bunch of regen and some on-demand damage reduction, which is fantastic. So those are skills we use. You'll notice some of these levels are more than 20, and I'll show the items that let me do that in just a second. But extra levels aren't a huge deal on most of these. You really don't need these extra points. They're just nice to have if you can happen to get them. So don't worry about it if you can't get those extra levels. They aren't essential for the build functioning. Alright, let's look at items now. I'll bring up my inventory here. So, my items are a little nuts, because I ended up getting this eyebrow chest piece. This is one of the better ones in the game because of the note at the bottom, 1% less damage taken per 2% resistance above normal resistance cap, which gives you a lot of less damage taken, which is great. But like really, like I put like 40 hours into this season, and like you get pretty nice stuff. Like you don't have to go that crazy, and it's not that hard to get good gear. To be able to better explain the gear, let's actually move over to last Epoch tools, which I think will do a better job of kind of me showing what you're going for, rather than like kind of what I've got, which some of it's better than you would normally have. Starting off, and doesn't do a very good job showing kind of the essentials. So let's move over to there. All right, so here we are on the last Epoch tools. Now this build is linked in the description, so you can just go to this planner and see the build as I planned it out here. And if I've made any changes from my live build, you'll see them here as well. So let's just take a look at some of the most basic stuff. So we have our wand. That's what you'd expect. Here I'm showing, like, part of how I approach this is I didn't put any exalted affixes in, but I just tried to put the affixes that matter the most and like kind of what you're trying to do. So with this wand, like you want a 5 affix if you can get it. So I just kind of wanted to show what you'd want if you got a sealed affix into here. And that kind of goes for everything else as well. These legendaries have, are 4 LP, which you're probably not going to ever find, but it's just to show what you'd want to put in them. So the biggest, we're really only using 2 uniques. The biggest is this Aurelius sword, which honestly feels handmade for the build, and is again one of the benefits of doing Electrify instead of like an on-hit fire or on-hit dot build. You could even do Void with this setup. But one of the benefits of doing Lightning Dot is Aurelius. So Aurelius gives us levels to Multistrike and Smite, which is nice, but it's not essential. But it is funny that those are our 2 main skills. The biggest part of this is it has a 100% chance to cast Smite after you use Multistrike and hit a boss or rare enemy. So that's an extra Smite, which is basically like an extra stack of armament, which is huge. That lets us stack even more Electrocute. Basically, getting extra Smite casts is one of the biggest things we can do to crank our damage. So this having 100% chance to cast Smite after you use Multistrike and hit is huge. Of course, Multistrike itself needs to hit. So, again, being in melee is really important. Making sure the melee hit lands is really important. So always keep that in mind. Then we also get extra chance to apply Electrify on melee hits. So this unfortunately does not apply to Smite, but it does apply to our melee hits. So it's still something. And then we get Lightning Penetration, which Electrify, which again is huge. Lightning Pen is a big deal, and one of the better damage multipliers we can get for the build. So that's a lot of Lightning Pen for all of our Electrify stacks, which is our main damage. So this just kind of all works out great. As for what you want to put on legendary versions of Aurelius, crit multi and melee attack speed are the most important. Melee attack speed lets us hit more often with Multistrike, cast more smites, stack our dots faster. More attacks, the better. So melee attack speed's always the most important thing. Crit multi is huge just for that more damage multiplier that we're getting from our passive tree. I'll bring it up again here, this time in tools instead of in-game. But that more lightning damage over time per 2% crit multi is huge. So we really want the crit multi here. The other 2 are also good, but not as important. Lightning Pen, again, penetration is a great damage multiplier, so we want it. And then chance to apply Ignite on hit. Again, it's a little awkward because it only works for Smite, but that just helps Smite stack Electrocute even more. It also means we'll stack a bit of Ignite from our melee hits and from healing hands, but that's not a big deal. And it's even a slight benefit. So, but the main reason we go for that is for the extra Electrify stacks on Smite. And then the other unique we're using is the Kenui Sphere. I haven't said that out loud, but Usenowi Sphere? I don't know. But this works really great with our build as well. So we have to kind of talk about this for a second. So basically we're using this to get a big buff to our lightning damage. The way it works is when you hit either a boss or a rare enemy, you have a 100% chance to cast a water orb. Those water orbs, I believe, do a bit of water damage and maybe lightning damage. Water damage, what am I saying? Cold damage and lightning damage. But it's not relevant. The point is, we get 30% increased cold and lightning damage for each water orb you've cast in the past 12 seconds. And there's another line there that says 3 water orbs per cast if attunement and int are equal. That's the reason I'm not taking any int or attunement from anything, because I want to make sure that we get that benefit. So you can see here I have int and attunement. The int and attunement I have are just from the quest reward for beating the campaign. That's it. In game I have a little more from rings, but it's even, so that's the most important part, is keeping those even. Basically what this means is, because there's a 3-second cooldown on casting water orbs, you do have a stack limit, which I can show here. If we look here, you can get to a max of 9 stacks in that 12-second window, which we do, which gives us a 270% increased lightning damage. That's really, really good for a single item. And that's just that effect, right? The implicit gives us increased lightning damage, and we can add more with legendary potential. So this ends up being really, really great. The mana tag's useless, but cold and lightning resist can help. Again, I show kind of what you'd want. The most important ones here for the legendary potential is the elemental damage over time and crit multi. Again, we've talked about crit multi. It's extremely important, probably the most important stat. But then elemental damage over time is the best stat you can get for damage over time. It's better than the generic damage over time because it rolls higher. So like, I think I can show here, if we look at elemental damage over time, at tier 571 to 110, it goes all the way up to 220 at tier 7. And if I go to the regular damage over time, which I think is on this, it might not be. Where are you? Well, lightning damage is the same as damage over time, as far as the numbers are concerned. But it's just like, if we went lightning damage instead, right? It caps at 120, which is not nearly as good. So what we really want is this increased elemental damage over time. So just keep that in mind. And then the other two, they don't matter as much, but here we just take health to have a bigger hit pool. You could take other defensive stats, but that's pretty much what I do, is defensive stats on those if they happen to happen. But those aren't important. Again, a 2 LP item, where if you can get the LE damage and crit multi on there, that's the most important thing. And you can settle for lightning damage as well, if you have to. So those are our 2 uniques. That's really all we need. There are plenty of other uniques you could use if you get enough LP on them. And I can go through some in a minute, but first we'll just take a look at the rest of the gear. The only kind of special piece of gear I have here is this experimental affix gloves. Because it has that armor mitigation, also applies damage over time. That just helps us with damage over time. We stack a lot of armor, so it's really nice to have that. You can see I'm using the gloves with the implicit armor mitigation. If you actually get all these on the same item, then that's crazy. Good job, you won. But like, I don't even have these in game right now, so that's kind of a pipe dream that I'd really like to have. You can see down there I included a seal to fix damage over time. That's just what you'd want if you don't have that armor mitigation applies damage over time. And we go with melee attack speed, because again, anywhere melee attack speed can roll, we want it. And gloves is the place, other than weapons, where you can get that. So like, if you can get that as exalted, that's, you know, the best thing you could get here. And then from there, it's just like, it's kind of stuff you'd expect. We need to cap our resistances, so we take resistances where we can get them. We want as much armor as we can. It's really easy, comparatively easy anyway, as Sentinel to stack armor. So like, set 67% armor mitigation here. You can get to 85 with better gear. Again, none of these have any exalted affixes or anything, so that's really great. Armor, if you don't know, only applies, boy, I wish I could remember off the top of my head. It's like 50% to elemental, or 40% to elemental damage rather than the full amount for physical, but it's still very strong. And that, along with our regen, are primary defenses. The other thing we try to get is, you'll see here, I have this 4th node, reduced bonus damage taken from crits. This is also great for us. All these nodes come with armor, and then also the reduced bonus damage taken from critical strikes. So if you can get this in enough places, you can see here, I have 110%. That's more than I'd actually need. But as long as you do 100% damage from reduced bonus damage taken from crits, then you'll just take standard damage from crits. So you don't have to worry about critical strikes at all. So highly recommend doing that if you don't want to just randomly get one shot by big hits, because we get a lot of regen from our healing hands, base regen. We have a lot. I actually have more than this in game. And you heal a lot, so, you shouldn't die, generally speaking, unless you're getting one shot, or just absolutely shotgun to death, which can happen, especially with damage over time. They nerf damage over time, but it can still just kind of blow you up if you're standing in something. And you don't have that much flexibility as a melee character, which again is the biggest problem with this build, is that being a melee character and having short range. It's hard not to stand and stuff sometimes. But otherwise, our defenses are really strong. Mostly we just want to take, health, vitality, armor, resistances. That's most of what we're taking here. When we can, we take elemental damage over time, because that's one of the best damage nodes you have. So I have it on the rings here. Increase lightning damage or increase dot damage depending on what's available. Increase health. I go vitality when there just kind of isn't anything to take other than stats, but strength also works because that gives you armor. So either one is fine, but I prefer vitality just for the bigger hit pool rather than mitigation. That helps more against dots. I guess the only other special mods is like both the chest and helmet can roll chance to apply electrify on hit with lightning skills. This is huge. Again, it's more electrify chance for smite specifically. We really want this, so that's one of the best mods you can get. We don't take any of the plus levels to our skills because, again, it doesn't matter that much. It doesn't help us that much. And some of these bases are just, like this helmet, I don't actually think this is necessarily the best base, but that void resist can be really nice. You can also get one that gives reduced bonus damage taken from crits to help with that, and that has more base armor, so that's good too. Just kind of depends on where your resistances are at. Amulet's interesting because here in this specific planner, I'm showing a bone amulet because it's just really useful for capping your resist. But depending on what you roll and stuff, there actually is a better option. If you can, you want a jade amulet because it gives you melee attack speed. Outside of the sword and the gloves, this is the only other place you can get it. So I highly recommend trying to get a jade amulet if you can, but it's not essential. There are a lot of good options. And of course you want lightning pen here, but that could also be damage over time or whatever. Just kind of whatever you can get. And the wand, like everything else, you want crit multi, elemental damage over time. Those are your best things. If you can, damage over time as a 5th affix, ignite chance, lightning pen. It's the same thing we've done on everything. And the base doesn't really matter for Crystal Wand because the base spell damage isn't really relevant because our hits don't matter that much. It's really just the electrify stacks. So you kind of just take whatever you can get here, which is nice because it gives you some flexibility in gearing. So let's talk about some uniques you could go if you get enough LP on them. One I'm using in-game right now, actually. Let's find it real quick. Or real slow, depending on how good a job I do at looking. Here we go. I'm using an Orion Sun Seal. Theoretically, you could use 2 of these and it'd be pretty sick. But basically gives you levels of Symbols of Hope, which the levels aren't that important, but Symbols of Hope is one that actually can use them. And increased symbol gain rate, which usually doesn't matter. But the benefit is we get percent increased armor, and then this last one is the biggest point. Symbols of Hope will automatically activate instead of you having to do it manually if you go below your endurance threshold. But it only uses 70 to 80% of the cooldown and mana cost, so it'll be back faster. So this is actually a really nice way to kind of automate Symbols of Hope even more. It's just something nice you can get if you happen to get it. Again, if you have 3 LP even, a lot of times almost any ring with 3 LP is worth using. That's often the case with a lot of items. So you can kind of look and see like what gives you benefits. Extra survivability is huge. Penetration for things. Even just, I don't know, resist, health. Like, you know, there's plenty of things you can use with rings, but that's the main standout one is Orient Sun Seal. The other big one, I guess, is I showed you in-game earlier, but if I can find it here. Null Portent's just good. It was bugged, so it was giving more damage reduction than it's supposed to, but it's still really good. This 1% less damage taken per 2% resistance above the normal cap. So basically, you just want to make sure every resist is at least 20% above the 75% cap, and you'll get an extra 20% less damage taken, which is huge. It's worth losing some armor. So like here, like the base I'm using has a ton of extra armor compared to Null Portent. But Null Portent, that extra damage reduction, especially for non-physical, is just really, really good. The main thing you'd lose if you don't have one of these with LP is the electrified chance on hit, but it's not too hard to get LP on it, especially with the Nemesis system, so you can kind of just use that. You can see like, it's like I have an LP2 one in 166, which is a little rare, but like not too insane. Getting something above that is nearly impossible, but it's still worth using if you have 2 LP. 1 LP, maybe. I would consider it, honestly, if you can just move Electrify over. It's just really good. Core of the Mountain is another consideration I've taken. This gain damage immunity for 3 seconds after being hit is really sick. It's really awesome. So if you can get this, if you don't know, comes from the hardest difficulty of Lylis Arbor. Though it's rare. It's very rare. That also gives you a shitload of armor. The plus all attributes is nice. That'll keep it even, so our orb still works. The extra endurance stuff. This is just also great for survivability. So those are the 2 I'd point out. There's plenty of other stuff. Again, this is the case with basically every slot. If you have enough LP, you can find some use here. Like Static Shell I was looking at. Could be kind of cool. It barely has any armor, which sucks. But you do more lightning damage. That's more, not increase, which is great. 2 shocked enemies and up to 175% more armor against shocked enemies. And we shock everything. We get shock chance from our passive tree, so we just shock things. Things will always be shocked when we're fighting them, which is fantastic. So this is just really good, but not as good as the other options. So like if you have a high LP option here, then you can do it. But, you know, I don't know. It doesn't have much armor, as you can see, even though it does give that more armor. So if you get armor other places, this can still be good. So, you know, just keep an eye out. Again, 3 LP plus stuff is just kind of good in general. So those are the main uniques I'd point out. Like, I don't know, there's not a ton of other crazy stuff. One thing you could do with gloves is you could go with atrophy here for this penetration against all resistances for damage over time. Some of the stuff like the time duration and stuff isn't relevant, and it does have bad armor, but like you get enough LP here and you can move over the melee attack speed. And like these are good. It's something you could use. There's other options as well, so just keep an eye out and look at stuff. But those are like the main ones that I would keep an eye out for. I guess we can really quickly talk about idols. The idol setup might look a little weird, but these new Weaver idols I think are really good, and we don't have a ton of brilliant options in our like normal idols. The most important ones are on these huge riot idols with this modifier that says you have a chance for an additional sword with Multistrike when you're at max armament stacks. As we've mentioned already, getting an extra cast of Smite each time you hit with Multistrike is a ton of extra damage, so we love this. If you get 2 perfect rolls, you get a 100% chance for an additional sword every time you hit, which is fantastic. And then the second one here, we just shred armor because that helps with damage. I put enchants on here that you want, but like you're not that likely to get, so just keep that in mind. And then for the Weaver Idols, and this is the reason I like them, is you can get Lightning Pen and damage over time, which is great. So we get 4 of those, and 4 of these small ones, that again, Lightning Pen, lightning damage. It's a lot of pen. There might be other options here. Like, I did give it a lot of thought, and this felt like the most powerful option. The thing I would never change is these 2 huge Riot Idols. You never ever want to change that. But you might have some leeway there to experiment if you want to. So you can always keep that in mind. So yeah, that's kind of just the build. It's a lot stronger than I think most people would think. I guess we could look at blessings real quick. These are also pretty standard. We take a bunch of armor, lightning damage, crit multi, because crit multi is so good for the more lightning damage. And this is just to help with resistances. You have some leeway on this one, depending on what you're doing with resistances. So this is just kind of what you're looking at. It feels pretty good to play, and it's really strong, especially in the single target department. And I'm a little surprised people aren't just talking about this. But then again, it is kind of similar to some builds that do exist in the game right now. Like, it kind of plays similar to Erasing Strike. And, like, you can also do the Electrify stacking thing with Javelin, which has the benefit of being a range skill, so you don't have to stand in melee all the time. But still, I've been really liking this thing. It's really strong. Oh, we lost connection to game server. I may as well real quickly just kind of show what a Monolith looks like with this build. So we'll go in and take a look. Let me switch scenes here. Okay, so we'll just go into a Monolith real quick. I don't even remember what I was doing last. What's my highest corruption? So you can see I actually just beat Aberoth for the first time on this character, so my corruption's not insane, but it is good, and you can beat Aberoth. So we'll just go into something here. It doesn't really matter what. I'll just do this gold one. I can kind of show you how it plays in practice. It's not, as far as AoE is concerned, it's not going to be blowing up the whole screen like some builds can, but like the AoE's not bad. Lizards are kind of annoying because staying on top of them is obnoxious, but you know how it is with lizards. Yeah, you just kind of run in, spam the attack, keep going, lunge to stuff, pick stuff up. This Nemesis is a good opportunity to show off the single target, so let me clear some stuff here, and then we'll go over there. Go grab this. I wasn't powering the Shattered Chains, but it looks like it went bad. Just too bad, but whatever. Put this in power again so I can show. I activate my aura to do extra damage, and then we blow him up. There you go. That's how it goes. You just kill him. I'll skip this tomb, sorry. Just to save time. You can kind of see, you just kind of jump in, hit, shit dies, keep going. I use lunge so I can jump to the sides of the screen. You aren't really in that much danger most of the time. The exception is if you get lots of champions or stuff, so like we have champion here. And it just kind of dies, not a big deal. I definitely don't have the best setup right now for my loot filter, by the way. So I might have to manually check some of this stuff, but I'll activate this rift. Now, one problem I have right now in my current character is that I don't have counter void resist. So stuff like void enemies are a little annoying. It's not like the end of the world, but like it's been capped for a long time, but I got some items where I really couldn't pass up some of the mods that we're on. So I just don't quite have all capped resist at the moment, but that is something I am trying to do, especially since I have that null portent chest piece. Alright, there we go. There's Echo. It's done. So yeah, that's pretty much the build. If you have any questions or suggestions, feel free to talk about it in the comments. This is the first time I've done a video like this. Forgive me for stumbling over my words sometimes, but I've always wanted to make a video on builds I've made in last Epoch, because it is an amazing game that I'm having a blast with. It's really fun to put builds together. So thanks for watching, and I hope you have good luck with this build.